it's time to get started. We'll give you an opportunity to make sure your coffee cup is full, to make sure you've got the right view on your screen. You might want to choose the speaker view in the upper right corner so that you can see our guest in full screen. I'm going to stop sharing now and we'll be starting momentarily. Okay, time for another episode of Coffee and Conversation with for District 7820 and guests. I'm delighted that we have folks from across the country joining us. There's some very early risers in Western Canada and folks from our neighboring district in 7810. Thrilled to have all of you join us because we're very excited to have a wonderful guest this morning. We have Valarie Wafer, and Valarie, her acronym is RIDE, which stands for Rotary International Director elect, and I'm not going to tell you very much about her other than that she's a past district governor from the Toronto area. She's now moved to a little bit farther north in Ontario and has been for the last couple of years preparing to take on this role as our incoming director for our zone, and she's going to be able to share a little bit about that whole process and what she's up to and what the plans are for the upcoming year. So good morning, Valarie, and welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me.
We are thrilled that you're able to join us this morning, and we're delighted to welcome people who are on this call as well as those on Facebook Live. We have people joining us in a couple of different media this morning, and that's terrific because I know that they want to hear from you. So Valarie, I'm going to start with a very simple question. What does a Rotary International Director actually do? And second part, how does one become one?
Well, good question. So there are 17 Rotary directors on the board, plus the president and the president-elect. So there's 19 people who sit on the board of directors, and we basically oversee the daily activities and the funds of Rotary International. We help write policy. We also sit on committees, which of course is where the work always gets done. So we receive many committee reports at the board level. We attend board meetings, we participate in those committees, and we serve the president. So if the president asks us to represent him, maybe not these days in person, we take direction from the president. So we represent our zones at the board table, but we also take an international. We're an international director. So when we make decisions based on our organization as a global organization. And how does one become one? The second part. Okay, so there's a few criteria that you need to become a director of Rotary International. One, you had to have been a past district governor. And then a number of years have to have evolved since then to put your name forward to become director. And you are elected by your peers in your zone. So I was nominated at our Zone Institute in Montreal, as Louisa said, a couple of years ago. So with all Rotary roles, there's a lead up to us taking office, and there's extensive training and investment into the leaders of Rotary International. So that's kind of what I've been going through since my nomination.
Great, thanks, Valarie. So obviously then you're going to become part of the board, and I think this year you've had the opportunity to sit in on a few board meetings, kind of a little precursor exposure to that. And I think the board just met last week, and obviously that was not in person as it typically would have been. Can you give us a little sense of how that board meeting went?
Sure. So it was an honor to actually be at the first board meeting. I started to backbench in January. So, you know, being in the boardroom on the 18th floor of One Rotary Center in Evanston, and being able to observe the way the board works, and you know, it's not going to happen again for the rest of the year. Put it that way. The board met last week online, and it was quite efficient. Obviously, we ended up using Zoom, and we had translation. So the people who English was not their first language were on their cell phones with the translators, and it worked quite well. So we adapted. We met every morning from 9 o'clock my time to 11. But on the last day, we ended up having to finish up our business, and we went till 2 o'clock, which was 3 a.m. for some of our people in Asia. So we've made the decision to continue all Rotary International committee work and board meetings online for the remainder of this calendar year. A lot of discussion at this board meeting about what's happening out in the Rotary world with regard to COVID. And I can tell you that President Mark and President-elect Holger and all the board, the emphasis was on the safety and security of Rotarians everywhere. And so for that reason, we will not be meeting in person. President Holger has decided that there'll be no presidential reps assigned during the next Rotary year for the same reason. You're encouraged to take everything online, and obviously when we're allowed to meet back out together, to be cautious and follow the protocols of your public health and local health authorities. But it's exciting time. As you can probably picture, we spent a lot of time speaking about the current state of COVID and how it's affecting us. And the other thing that came out of the meeting that's quite exciting is there's a lot of really great committee work being done right now. I'm not sure if Director Jeffrey spoke to you, and he was your guest on this Coffee and Conversation about the Shaping Rotary's Future Committee and some of the things that they have been working on to really look at everything that we do in Rotary and how we can be a relevant organization going forward. So of course, taking everything online right now has really pushed the go button to some of that change, and we really can't go back to where we left off, and whatever that looks like is yet to be seen. But President-elect Holger has started a task force right now to talk about how we have pivoted. We need to pivot, we need to move forward and look at our organization, and what a great opportunity this is for us as Rotarians. So that task force will be in place, a 9-member task force, until October 31st at this point, to really take a look at everything that's being done in the Rotary world and how we can incorporate this and come out of COVID being a much more relevant organization.
Yeah, we knew that this kind of conversation was happening behind the scenes, so it's great to hear that the timeline seems to have moved up a little bit, at least for this one group that will be coming back to us in October, which is great. But at this point, and based on what the board was looking at, what advice or suggestions would you have for people on the call who are either incoming club leaders, incoming district leaders? What are some of the sort of key things that they can do as they're planning for the next year?
Well, you know, I mean, I'm an incoming leader as well. And for all of the incoming leaders, it's not going to be as we expected and as we planned. And again, that's okay. It's a huge opportunity. What I would suggest is, you know, taking care of each other and making sure everybody is safe and sound in your Rotary clubs and in your community. I think this is a time for us to build those relationships and partnerships with our community and do those community assessments to really know what our needs not only are right now, but what our community is going to look like on the other side of this. We're going to see a lot of small and medium-sized business loss. And you know, these are our partners who have always supported us through our fundraising, through our, you know, when we have our events, they're buying tickets, they're coming. This is our opportunity to support them. So reach out. I know you already have those relationships, but reach out and see what we can do for those small and medium businesses that drive our communities. I know that many of you probably come from a small community. I moved to Collingwood, which is 2 hours north of Toronto. So my business was in Toronto when I was operating. So I really understand you know, the small community mindset and how important it is for us to band together. And as you did, unfortunately, last week with your tragedy. So I know you have really strong community ties, and I would say as incoming leaders and leaders in Rotary, this is the time for us to build those relationships. And it's not a time necessarily for membership recruitment. Definitely, you know, this is a great forum for inviting people who don't know what Rotary is to connect. Connection right now is so important. But if we build these relationships and we you know, get out in our community and make those phone calls, I believe on the other side of COVID, we will see our membership grow and we will become a more relevant organization that people will want to be part of. there's a lot of people working from home right now. And I think we're going to see a hybrid of people staying home and working. And so they're going to have a lot more flexibility to join us in our Rotary meetings, even if when it is in person. But as we're also finding working from home, it's lonely and the isolation is really tough. So that's something that we'll have to evolve and adapt to on the other side of COVID if we see more people working from home. The other part of that is, though, that they're going to want to get out in the community and they're going to want to join up and they're going to want to have some hands-on. So I see this as a huge opportunity for us as leaders. Again, not necessarily a time for membership recruitment right now, but if we do it right, people will want to join us. They'll see us as that relevant way of connecting after COVID's over.
Right. No, I think that's a great point. And we've always talked about, rather than focusing on recruiting or trying to talk people into becoming part of Rotary, to be irresistible to them. And that idea of connecting more with our communities is certainly part of that. Were there any other particular actions that came out of the board meeting last week, or anything else that the board was discussing that would help us as we think about where we're headed? I know that's a bit of a tough question because some things probably aren't ready to be shared, but are there any other kind of key outcomes that stuck in your mind as being really relevant to people in Canada, for example?
As I said, a lot of it was really a COVID discussion. We obviously looked at some of the goals that are set for the Secretariat. We spoke a lot about impact to budget, but we all agreed this isn't necessarily a time to speak about the dollars and cents of some of the activities that aren't going on. But as you can imagine, even with your we're all being impacted in our district budgets and in our operating budgets, positively and negatively. I mean, for many of us in our district, we've been so generous to help purchase personal protective equipment and as much as we can. So the disaster response, we obviously spoke a lot about what the trustees are doing and the work that they have been able to pull together in quick meetings. And, with our disaster response funds, the changes that the trustees have made to our district grants are being able to use and redirect funds to directly address the COVID response. Of course, you know that, or if you don't, we're having a Rotary Response Telethon this Saturday, where the trustees, it's going to be hosted by past President Barry Rassin and past RI Director John Smarge, and we're going to hear some really great inspirational stories. So, there's a lot of great work going on at the trustee level and at the board level in response to this. As you may or may not know, Jeffrey and I have been meeting with the district governors and district governor-elects on a bi-weekly basis to ensure that clubs are still meeting. We're driving that innovation down to the club level. If you've ever heard me speak, I was a Tim Horton franchisee for 25 years, and I quite often compare our Rotary clubs in our communities to franchises, because even though we had a number of stores in the same area, each store really responded to the community as far as product offerings, because we knew what our customers wanted to buy. We knew what our customers were like. And I believe, and I use this analogy all the time with our Rotary clubs. So this is the time where I think we're really going to see some innovation in our communities, because we know our communities and we know and can innovate as to what our communities look like. So I'm excited that both the trustees and the directors are working and really hard with our leadership team to ensure that we're supporting them as much as we can.
Yeah, that's great to hear. So you talked about budgets, and obviously that's a big thing on people's minds now, with both the combination of fundraisers being either postponed, or who knows if some of them will come back. Are you hearing any interesting or innovative ideas of what clubs are considering or looking to do in the future to compensate for the fact that the big things that we've done, and dinners and big auctions and rib fests and all those things, are just not going to happen for quite some time?
Yeah, no, I agree. Those large, really great revenue generators, they're going to be really tough to replicate online. There's no doubt about it. I mean, there are certainly ways we can fundraise online. I was on a call a couple of weeks ago with the Rotary Club of Hamilton, and they've been online fundraising for years, and they have the benefit of having a member who has built this online platform for them to be able to accept donations. And so they're ahead of the curve. But there's obviously little ways we can have a donate now button or a virtual tip jar to some of the things that we're doing, or asking for donations after the fact. I haven't heard any innovative ideas for those large fundraisers, Louisa. Maybe they will come, but I haven't heard any right now. Yeah.
For some reason, there we go. Sorry, my unmute wasn't unmuting me. So then the other question that we're hearing from some clubs now is people are asking, is it possible to adjust any of the dues? And so certainly the district budget is being formulated now, and that can be looked at. Club budgets are being put together. What's the conversation at the RI level from that standpoint?
Again, as far as budget goes, we did speak about numbers. We didn't specifically speak about dues, although we recognize it is certainly something that districts can do. I know my own club has decided to waive the last quarter dues because we had some money in the budget that wasn't going to be spent. So it's certainly up to each club in each district. And as you say, it's a moving target at this point. I think as we get further into the months, we'll really have to look at the impact to our budgets. The conversation is to be continued at the RI board level about dues.
Right. And you had said earlier that obviously this is a very difficult time at the moment, but we're facing those challenges, but that it presents opportunities. And you spoke a little bit about that, but can you talk a little bit more about what kinds of opportunities are available, or should we be thinking about, especially again, as leaders coming into the next year? What are the upsides that we can be thinking about?
Well, I think it's the way we're going to, what we do today is really determining what we're going to look like in the future. And one of the things that really excites me, and I spoke about this before, is cause-based clubs, and clubs that are really focused on our community. And so one example is I talked to a district recently who recognized that every club in the district was really interested in the homeless situation in their community. It was a huge problem. And so when you think about either a district or even a club that is really focused on a concern of your community, and homelessness is a really great example, because if you think of the different aspects of homelessness and picture a club and have committees based on addiction, food sourcing, shelter, you can quickly see that if you recognize a community issue and a focus, how everybody could be engaged and using their connections and their background to address a huge concern in the community. And just think about the public image that would go with that. So a lot of people complain that people don't know what Rotary is, and maybe we should be buying a billboard ad and put it in people's face. But people still, they see the Rotary wheel, but they still don't really know what we do. And we do a lot of really great small things, and I'm speaking generally, but we do a lot of really great small things in our community. And I think sometimes that's part of our branding problem. We're not known for one specific thing. Unfortunately, sometimes the one specific thing we're known for is we do Ribfest, or we do, it's more around our fundraisers rather than who we are and what we do. So picture that Rotary Club not only being able to talk about the issue that they're addressing, but the partnerships that they're making in their community. So I talked earlier about, the importance of reaching out to businesses that are going to need your help, but the partners in your community. We shouldn't be duplicating efforts and duplicating services in our community. And I think sometimes we do that. And again, we kind of blend our brand by not having that specific focus. So I think that some of the opportunities, if we're looking at Rotary through the lens of what we're going through right now, we have an amazing opportunity to rebrand ourselves in our community and be stronger and more relevant. And again, picture that homelessness focus, and the partners who, you know, will join you so that we're not doing the duplication of efforts, or people who always wanted to address that, but it's a huge undertaking and they felt as one person they couldn't address it. And that, as we always know, is the beauty of Rotary, because we can do more together than we can do individually. We can make a bigger impact. So this is one example, but I think there's some wonderful opportunities for us.
Yeah, I think that idea of cause-based clubs as one model is one that's really getting a lot of conversation now, which is really interesting. And then some of the other models. Are there other club models or innovative opportunities? I'm even hearing some language shift in some of the leadership around talking about participants, for example, as opposed to members. Participants of Rotary instead of member of a club. What's your thinking around that kind of language and innovative ways of looking at being Rotary?
Well, I think this is another great example of where we're ahead of the curve, that we've been exploring some models. Again, the Shaping Rotary's Future has looked at all of our governance, but there's another pilot going on right now, and it's called Rotary Connects, and it's more of a global membership model where you wouldn't necessarily belong to a club, you would belong to Rotary. And they've already tested this. They're doing it in Houston, and they're doing it close to Evanston for the support. So Houston and Chicago. And the idea being that you join for the experience in Rotary, and you join to learn and develop leadership, to have mentorship, and be able to do hands-on activities in your community. So they brought together kind of I guess like a cocktail after hours. They've had a few meetings to bring together and just kind of gauge the interest from the demographics that they were hoping to really attract. And it's been very, very successful. The reason they chose Houston is because the convention in 2022 is in Houston, and they were really hoping to celebrate this, and they will celebrate this as a model going forward. So they really have put some resources behind this to advertise Rotary in a new, energetic, fresh way to the demographics that they're hoping to. And you know, I think it's going to be a hybrid model where they'll meet online, and then they'll get together in their community. So, you know, almost using some of our passport technology too, right? Where you're meeting online, but you don't have to be in the same community, and then you can get together to do some hands-on, and probably just jumping on. I believe the app is called Meetup, where you can sign up for service activities. So just kind of really incorporating a lot of really great things that we're seeing not only young professionals really embrace, but people, retired people who want to be hands-on. So we're not necessarily looking at one particular demographic, but it's exciting because this work had already started, right? And so now we're going to see some support for this. So one of the things that I think has held us back in Rotary is the fact that we change our leadership every single year. So picture a corporation changing their CEO every year. Now, thank goodness we have some really great direction with our secretariat, with our Rotary support staff, and our strategic plan. And the great thing is, you know, we've been hearing tone from the top for a number of years now about change. And so we are really in a great position to pivot and take advantage of this. So that global membership is something that was already on the table, already in pilot. And so they're going live, I believe, with the online portion of that in the next couple of weeks. They were testing it last week. So they're ready. And it really is exciting.
It is, and I had the pleasure of spending a bit of time with the folks in Houston talking about some of the innovation there, and I hope this isn't affecting their momentum too much, but the energy and enthusiasm to try new things with global membership and use some different language was really quite powerful, I thought. I know we've had a few questions come in, and rather than wait till the end, because I know some of them are relevant right now, Holly, maybe we could open the line to a couple of the folks that have questions. I saw Fred Wright had a question, and I think Kevin Connors did too. Maybe you could unmute them and we could have those questions come while we're on this topic. And anybody else, please let Holly know through the chat if you have a question for Valarie.
Go ahead, Fred.
Valarie, I'm wondering if you know, we do a lot of global grants from the foundation. I'm wondering if some money could be set aside to do public image grants public image, you've just said, is really, really important. And I think that historically we've done a poor job of it. So any thoughts about public image grants?
Well, you know, there's a lot of really great resources, as you probably know, some wonderful videos available for you at any time on Rotary.org to use in your public image. And Fred, I know what you're referring to. Years ago, we had public image grants where we could buy radio time, buy billboard time, but it really goes back to, you know, it's really what we're doing. So the People of Action campaign, I think, was a really great step forward where we realized we can't have static images. We really need to show what we're doing, not necessarily who we are. And so that's why I think there's a really great opportunity. Again, innovation comes at the club level. And I really think it's an opportunity for you to find your focus and then advertise the heck out of it. Find a way to really make it personal, because the general large message of Rotary is important, but I'm not sure that it really resonates with the people that we're trying to attract to Rotary, and until we make it personal, until we really tailor it to our community. Because what's important in your community is probably not important in Toronto, for example. So developing that personal story, telling that personal story is really what will engage and promote who we are and what we do.
Thanks, Fred. That was a great question. And just so people know, Fred's joining us from Kenora, I think, if my memory is correct. So that's wonderful to have Fred up a little bit early in the morning and joining us today. So certainly the public image piece is a big one. So this district has just purchased new banners for every club in the district to have as part of the re-entry to the community, to have a contemporary look and maybe retire some of the dusty felt and have something that's fresh and new. So we're constantly trying to think of ways to help with that kind of public image. So I'm happy to hear that question. Holly, do we have another one that you maybe, Kevin, I think, had one.
Okay, we'll go with Kevin and then we'll go back to Brad.
Our club has been in the last couple of weeks looking at the possibility of doing online lotteries. And as you probably know, most of our fundraisers have been shut down. We've got some estimates from computer companies that it would take 60 to 70 hours of computer programming time to develop a platform to do an online lottery. Do you know if there's any best practices around the Rotary world that could be shared with clubs that could be adjusted to online lotteries, raffles, donations, that sort of thing?
I wasn't until last week, so your timing is everything. I can tell you that the Rotary Club of Mississauga, which is just outside of Toronto, so it's actually in District 7080. They own a lottery license, and they are doing online lottery, and they are willing to share that technology and best practices with anyone. So I'll get the contact to Louisa and she can share it with you. It's, you know, rather than starting from scratch or you've already done a lot of work, it'll either support what you've done or maybe it'll help you take it in the next direction.
Thanks, Kevin. Great question. Did you have a follow-up? I sound like the news conferences. Do you have a follow-up?
No, that's a great answer. I look forward to receiving it.
Okay.
We'll share that. I think Brad was next. Brad in Newfoundland, what was your question?
Just a quick question on the telethon. I would like to know if there's a link that we could watch it.
Sure, it's on Facebook. Many people have shared it, and I can't remember. I think it's on the Rotary.org website as well, but it's definitely on Facebook.
And that's a good point. I'll make sure to share that on our Facebook site, the district Facebook site, later today, so that everyone can have access to that. Holly, are there any other questions right now that we should address before we move on?
Yeah, can we do Dawn's Sword? Because it's talking about the International Convention.
Sure, go ahead, Dawn.
Hi, Valerie. Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
So I just heard yesterday, I guess the day before, that there's plans to do a virtual international convention instead of the one in Hawaii. Pat and I were planning going to Hawaii, but that's been canceled. So like everything else. So what can you tell us? I know there's more coming about it.
Yes, there is more coming about it tomorrow, actually, I believe, May 1st. So it's going to be the two general sessions are going to be on Saturday, June 20th and Sunday, June 21st. It will be at 8 o'clock Chicago time, Central time. That time works well. It's when we had our board meetings for around the world for timing for everyone as well. And I believe they're going to be about 75 minutes long, the two plenary sessions, general sessions, followed up, and this will be coming forward to you tomorrow, followed up by some breakout sessions and other things that you can attend during the week. I believe everything's going to be recorded so that you will be able to watch it at your leisure as well. But, you know, they're working around the clock, as you can probably imagine, to take this online, which is very exciting. Last week, I actually participated in District Governor Peter Schultz's District 5060 conference, and it can be done. There's things that are a little more difficult. There's, you know, Peter will tell you that handing out awards just isn't the same. But you know, it's necessary to reward Rotarians. So, you know, there's going to be business aspects, obviously, the things that get voted on at our international conventions, and it'll be interesting to see how that all comes together. But yeah, no, it's exciting. It's exciting. It's so important. I mean, as you know, President Mark has just been, you know, so excited about Honolulu as such a great destination. Not that any of the others aren't, but Honolulu is just so amazing culturally, and so I know he was very disappointed, but it showed great leadership, you know, for him to cancel the convention again with the concerns for the health and safety of everyone. I can tell you that we were ahead of all the other organized service organizations in canceling our convention, and it was the right thing to do. So it's exciting that we can celebrate in some form.
Definitely the right thing to do. And certainly, again, as information comes out, I'll make sure that that link is on our district Facebook as well, so that people will have up-to-date information about that and about other district conferences that are happening online. I participated in the one, Valarie, that you mentioned in British Columbia last week as well. And it really is quite remarkable what we can do online. So that's great to see. I wanted to also remind our viewers on Facebook Live that if you have questions, please also type them in on Facebook so that Holly is able to share those with us. Holly, anyone else that we should have right now?
Yeah, I have a couple more here. Duncan Conrad.
Hello, Valerie. How are you?
Great to see you, Duncan.
Great to see you too, as always, my friend. Just a quick clarification. When you started off, you talked about incoming President Hogarth's position with regards to meetings and the cancellation of RI President's reps. Then you talked about meetings in person. Can you just clarify what Rotary's position is on that? Given the fact that, of course, every province has its own health policies around large gatherings, and they'll be phased in over the next whatever number of months. But I'm just wondering if you can clarify what Rotary's position is.
Sure. So as you can appreciate around the world, with 17 directors from around the world, we're all in a different position at a different period of time. You know, South Korea has already started to reopen certain lifting restrictions. So the overall policy is obviously to follow your local health authorities and government's rules. It was difficult to make an overarching statement for us globally, but we did take the position that we as a board would not get together for the next calendar year. When we can meet back in small groups, you know, we all recognize that we're all missing that social interaction and it's who we are to get together the way we do. But I don't think the board can make a decision for, you know, an overarching statement. It really is going to be regionalized and sorry.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's
we made decisions for us as a board. We made decisions on putting the safety of presidential reps, for example. I can tell you one thing, that there will be no pressure from anyone who is not comfortable to travel, even once restrictions are opened. There will be there'll be no expectations. If you are not comfortable traveling, then that is your personal decision. So it's a really respectful decision of everybody's personal place and comfort level.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Duncan. Nice to see little Charlotte, the puppy behind you there. Beacon
Yes.
is very happy to see that Charlotte's participating. Holly, who else do we have?
Okay, Darren Hansen.
Go ahead, Darren. Go ahead, Darren. We're not hearing you.
Am I there now?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Valerie.
Hi, Darren.
So before all this mess happened with COVID, we were really engaged at 7810 looking at these new membership models that have been discussed for so long, e-clubs, passport clubs, online. Unfortunately, since COVID, what we have found with our clubs that are trying to transition to the digital medium, we've had a lot of clubs go dark. A lot of members go dark, a lot of clubs go dark. We have provided bursaries to the clubs to pay for online meeting formats, so to go towards paying for Zoom or GoToMeeting, whatever they'd like to use. We've had a number of them take us up on it, but we are seeing many of our smaller clubs have simply stopped meeting and being engaged at all. And there's a real concern at the district level that the longer this goes on, we're going to be at a real risk of losing some of our clubs. They've just lost their engagement. They're losing their club. I'm sure this is not unique to our area. So any insight on a bigger perspective of how to deal with this issue with clubs going dark?
Well, that was one of Director Jeffrey and my biggest concerns when all this started. And, we've been overwhelmed that it's been quite the opposite for the most part, that people are meeting. My concern with the clubs that are not meeting at all, especially if they were tech savvy, if you were already talking about Zoom meetings and stuff like that, passport clubs, have you tried to personally pick up the phone and call them? Maybe they're joining other meetings. I would hope that they're joining other meetings. I would hope that not all members of certain clubs have gone completely dark, but you're absolutely right. If this goes on for a long time and they haven't been meeting, then the easiest thing to do would be to not join back up and not be part of it. And that is definitely a concern. My advice would be to reach out to them personally, probably start with the club president and ask if they've taken any initiative, or are they keeping in touch with each other? Are they, even if they're not meeting, have they lost contact? Are they still doing anything in the community? And just understand why perhaps certain clubs and their cultures has not allowed them to meet, or they don't want to meet. The other thing you have to look at is how vibrant of a club they were perhaps on the, before COVID happened. And is this kind of indicative of the way the club was before? And if there's a few members, who want to stay engaged, then redirect them to other membership models. There's another great resource, Louisa, that maybe we can share. Somebody in Australia started a Google Doc page with all clubs that are online when they meet. So you could basically go to a meeting in Australia or India. If the time and the date works for you, there's a Zoom link there, or they're meeting on GoToMeeting or Facebook Live that you can join a meeting. So there's a lot of options out there. If clubs aren't comfortable running a Zoom meeting themselves, and it doesn't have to be formal. I mean, I'm sure you've had socials on Zoom as well, where it's just fun. It's just, open conversation. But I would reach out. I would show them that there are different alternatives and try to keep them engaged.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I know some clubs are seeing increased participation in Zoom meetings, and others are challenged, and others aren't trying it yet. And so one of the things we've been trying this week is we've asked all of our area governors to reach out with a phone call, not an email, but a phone call to all presidents to just, again, check in. And then this kind of opportunity that's at the district-wide level gives people who maybe are not able to participate in a local club at least to stay connected. And so that was one of the reasons why we decided to do this this kind of district-wide activity to engage people, but it's absolutely challenging, especially, I know, Darren, when you're looking at new passport clubs, we've had that as well. It's pretty hard to be trying to get those folks to engage. And for folks that don't know, I'm delighted that Darren is here. Darren is the district governor nominee in our neighboring district 7810. So nice to have you with us, and that's a really important question. The other piece I would just comment around keeping people engaged, doing things like this banner project where we've purchased a banner for every district has allowed us to engage with every single club. So every club in our district has now ordered a banner, which meant we had an opportunity to talk about, so what's your website, what's your Facebook, what should you be putting out? Oh, maybe you might want to update your URL. Maybe we want to think about the wording. And so sometimes doing some projects give you an opportunity to have a conversation you wouldn't have otherwise had. I think we're getting close to the end of our question time, but Holly, do you have any others that that we should have now?
Yeah, there's just the last one here is from Rob Christie.
Go ahead, Rob.
First of all, Louisa, the banner is ordered. You can smile.
Yes.
I have a question for Valarie, and Valarie, welcome to our district. I want to do a quick follow-up. Given what you said about the non-meeting face-to-face of our executive, etc., what's the status of the Land on, or the Life on Land symposium, your symposium that you're planning for Alaska in November?
Great question. As soon as we ended up in a physical distancing situation, I decided to have the conversation in advance with my venues. So I planned on three events in the next Rotary year. One of them was going to be the governor-elect training and nominee training, and that was going to be in Toronto. We made in September. So we made the decision very quickly to take that online so that the team could spend the time now preparing to train our governor-elects and our nominees online and get them prepared for International Assembly and get them prepared for July 1st next year. Each of my venues, so Toronto and then Life on Land in Alaska and Life Below Water in Bermuda, each of my hotel venues have agreed to defer the contracts to the next year. Very lucky that way, no penalties. So we decided to, as I say, take Toronto online. We decided to postpone Anchorage, and we are waiting and seeing for Bermuda because Bermuda is in January. But at any rate, each of the hotels have agreed to defer to the next year. So, you know, the focus on these symposiums were around the environment, and the idea being that we attract new people, partnerships, working with Rotary action groups to speak about those two UN Sustainable Development Goals, Life on Land and Life Below Water. On the other side of COVID, even though we defer these contracts, we may have a totally different focus, and it may be more on rebuilding business and you know, economy based. So we may be deferring the contracts, and the focus may be a little bit different. You know, as we see, we're having actually positive impacts on our environment because of physical distancing. Every day we open up the newspaper and we're seeing that, you know, the ozone level, the ozone hole is closed. Sorry, probably not using the right terminology. You know, it's amazing what's going on, and it's just so fascinating to wonder what the world is going to, you know, really look like and what the focus is going to be outside of COVID. But I still think there's some really great opportunities that when we can come together, we will celebrate. And so stay tuned. We'll see how it evolves. But thanks for the question, Rob.
Yeah, good question. And I just happened to notice that Fred commented on your use of language around physical distancing as opposed to social distancing. We're certainly doing everything we can to stay socially and personally connected, but obviously respecting the physical piece. Okay, Holly, I think maybe we could do one more, or might there be one even from Facebook Live that we can do before we go to our next thing?
As far as I can see, there's none on Facebook Live. There is a question from Dan Curry that just popped in.
Okay, we'll take that one as the last one before I ask Valarie for some final comments, and then we have two other things we're going to do this morning.
Okay, Dan, go ahead, Dan.
Oh, I was just asking, I was interested in the comment from Darren. I was wondering if any clubs are having problems because they don't have broadband, and more rural clubs across the in the Maritimes, particularly out west, are having issues with not having broadband, and it may cause them to not be able to do virtual meetings like we are here. We're very fortunate where I live to have very high speed, but I know not far from here, there is places where you can't get this kind of thing, and I wouldn't be able to participate. So I was just wondering if there's anybody else having those kind of issues.
Well, I personally do, Dan. So I have satellite internet, and what I've ended up doing is calling my cell provider and upping my data to infinite so I can use my phone as a hotspot. But you're right. We've had meetings, and I know we had a meeting with the Alaska folks last week, and there's a lot of people who live very rural. I mean, their mode of transportation is a float plane for a lot of times. They live in really remote communities. So we see things like people in their car on their cell phone when they can get reception, and you're right, it's not convenient. So all the more reason why we need to reach out by telephone and make sure that the people who are really remote are feeling engaged. And maybe it's the fact that we think of a way of using the telephone. I'm not a technology person, but you know, you're absolutely right. We need to reach out to those people, and we don't know why they're not joining us. And that's a really great point, that maybe it's just that they can't physically connect with us.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and we've had a few folks too that maybe have a connection, but they're a little bit apprehensive or just not comfortable with the technology. So Holly in particular has been really helpful with folks. And if anyone knows anyone in their club that maybe is just not sure or a little bit nervous about the Zoom thing, we're happy to do one-to-one hand-holding tutorials and to help people if they have that connection. But that is true. That is the first challenge. Okay, Valarie, I'm going to give you an opportunity if there's anything that you wanted to make sure you shared with us before we go on to the next thing that we have planned this morning.
No, I'm just, you know what, thank you so much for inviting me. And I really want to compliment you on this format because it's focused. I love the interview style. My only concern with the longer COVID goes on is that we are meeting for the sake of meeting, and we're kind of replicating some of the stuff maybe that we saw in our every week meeting when we were meeting in person. We have to make these meetings relevant. We have to have an agenda. We have to, have a reason for people to participate in these meetings. Otherwise, I believe that we will drift off. We're in a really positive spot right now, where, as Louisa said, we're seeing better attendance than we're seeing sometime at our weekly meetings. So keep it engaging, keep it fun. And maybe it's an opportunity as well at the club level to do some classification talks, to allow each of the members to have a platform to speak, because sometimes in these meetings, people are just virtually watching and they're not participating. So I think it's really important that we give everyone a chance to speak and let them maybe highlight something in each of the meetings, and that'll keep people engaged. So wonderful, wonderful job. Great work that you're doing. And thank you so much for inviting me. And I'm